Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Soto, and I am the Executive Director of Equality Arizona. So thrilled to be here with you all today. Thanks for making some time for our mid-session policy brief. We just wanted to take a few minutes to give you an update on what's happening in the state legislature and what's happening in our policy work around the state. And so this will just be a real quick update in terms of winning LGBTQ equality here in Arizona. The 2021 session has been eventful, to say the least, here at the legislature. So we'll be briefing a lot on that and on some of our municipal work. So we can go to the next slide. So I want to set the context a little bit as we talk about Arizona's policy work in Arizona and the political landscape here. I think it's really important to keep in mind that Arizona is now officially a swing state, which is wonderful. It's also a bellwether for policy work and electoral work throughout the country. The political and policy trends that we see set here often set the context for work that happens later in the rest of the country. In fact, for a long time, many of us that do this kind of work have called Arizona a political testing lab. And we see this both in conservative politics and in more progressive or liberal politics. Arizona is often a place where different tactics, strategies, policies are introduced for the first time and used to see what will happen, and the different sides sort of test those out. We saw that with something like SB 1070, which was more than 10 years ago now. We saw that with the first anti-trans bills that were introduced. We also see that with mobilization efforts to do things like repeal SB 1070 or against Sheriff Arpaio, right, to oust him from office and elect Sheriff Pinzone. So you see, Arizona is a really critical state in terms of our policy, not just here in Arizona, but nationwide. As you can see, Arizona in these maps, Arizona really is a unique and interesting state where we have these are electoral results from 2020. You can see we're very much pretty much evenly divided in terms of red and blue, right, in the map distributions there for the different offices. Like many places, our greater population centers went blue this last election, and our rural counties still went red. Arizona is also an interesting place because our electorate is divided pretty much equally into three parts: Republican, Democrat, and Independent. And so it makes doing political work here a bit of an adventure. Can we have the next slide? So as I mentioned, Arizona is this testing lab, right? And so we had the first anti-trans bills in many respects. In 2014, the bathroom bill. In 2019, we were one of two states that had the trans athlete bills. This session, we had an anti-trans athlete bill and an anti-trans youth medical ban introduced in this legislature. Next slide. 2020, in terms of the legislative session, in many ways is about backlash. It's about backlash from 2021, excuse me, is really a backlash from 2020. What we're seeing throughout the state and throughout all of the states is an introduction of anti-LGBTQ legislation, voter suppression legislation, and anti-choice legislation that's really in some ways sort of a backlash to Biden winning at the federal level, folks like Mark Kelly winning at the federal level, but Republicans staying firmly elected and in some places even getting a stronger hold in terms of state legislatures and local offices. So far around the country, there have been at least 286 anti-LGBTQ bills that have been introduced in state legislatures and assemblies, most of which are targeting LGBTQ youth and specific trans youth. So Arizona, just like many other states, has had our share of these bills this session. Can we go to the next slide? So Equality Arizona and our partners We've already beaten dozens of bills. We've been fighting many, many bills this session, many of which have been anti-LGBTQ, but also voting rights bills and anti-choice bills, and just lots of bad bills that are highly partisan. In Arizona, more than 30 LGBTQ related bills were introduced this session, the majority of which, or many of which, were positive bills. Unfortunately, the majority of the session has been taken up by fighting for bad bills, or fighting against bad bills instead of fighting for good bills. Can we go to the next slide? So here's a list of the anti-LGBTQ bills in the 2021 session in Arizona that we've spent a whole lot of time working on, and that our partners around the state have spent a lot of time working on, and that a lot of you have spent a lot of time contacting your legislators about. You see, this list has a wide range of topics that are covered. It includes the trans athlete ban, trans medical ban, a conversion therapy preemption, which would basically make it so that local governments like counties or cities could not ban conversion therapy. Only the state could ban conversion therapy. A parental opt-in for sex education, but also for all LGBTQ curriculum. We actually have a really good video that gives some good information about this bill, SB 1456 in particular, because this bill is really far-reaching. It's a pretty scary expansion of the bill that Equality Arizona and our partners were, or the law that we were able to repeal in 2019, that was called No Promo Homo. We have other bills here that dealt with legal documents, from everything from state IDs to birth certificates, another sex education bill, and the last bill is a bill that creates a liability shield for religious organizations, churches, and for people affiliated with religious activity. This liability shield is both civil and criminal, and would be expansive. It could potentially cover anything from, could potentially be a liability shield from anything from child abuse to conversion therapy. And so it's a pretty dangerous bill. This bill passed the House and is now in the Senate. The SB 1456 passed the it's going through the process as well. Those two are alive, very much alive still, and we're watching them very, very carefully. We're doing our best to alert you all. In fact, you should have gotten 2 alerts this week about those 2 bills in particular. And we're watching them very closely. And so as soon as one of them it makes another move, as soon as they go through next step in the process, we will let you know where they're at, so that you can contact your legislators and even the governor when it's time, if it gets that far, to say that these bills are bad for Arizona. Can we go to the next slide? So before session's over, before the official end of session, I always am very cautious and try not to say that any bill is dead, because in Arizona we have something called strike everything bills. And that really means that no bill is dead until the session is completely over. The conversion therapy preemption bill, the original bill, we beat with our partners, and because of all of you, it was done. It was over with. It was died in committee. But because we have these strike everything bills, we've seen it come back twice now. So it came back the first time as SB 1325, which we also beat because of all of you and our partner organizations. And now we're seeing it again in its latest form in SB 1269. It's in the House right now. It was just heard in committee. It's, as soon as we know what the next steps are, when it's on an agenda again, we will alert you immediately, because we'll need you to take action. And whether that's testifying in a committee or contacting your legislators to ask them to not vote for it, I'll let you know as soon as we see that bill on an agenda. So because of these strike everything bills, some of the bills that we've been fighting and that you saw on the last slide are stalled, or have not made it through different benchmarks in terms of the progress that they would need to make to move forward in the legislative process. But because we have these strike everything bills, it's almost impossible to tell you that anything is dead until the session is over, and any one topic is off the table until the session is over. And so that can be tiring. And trust me, I feel that. And I know for a lot of our parents out there, our trans kiddos, our LGBTQ kids, everyone, or all of our allies, all of our community, I know that can be really tiring and really hard, because it feels like we win a little bit, and then a bill can come back, or we can, it feels like we lose ground in some form. But that's a part of the process. And so we will do our best to keep you informed as to what's happening. And when the session is over, I promise we will hopefully all celebrate together, and be able to celebrate beating some of these really awful bills that we're seeing pass in other parts of the country. One of the things that I hope that the Arizona legislature has learned, and that our governor has learned over time, is that these kinds of highly partisan, highly divisive, discriminatory bills are bad for Arizona. They cause they call it statewide and national boycotts, right? They cause um, businesses and employers to be fearful to relocate here, or to invest in this state. They cause, our amazing LGBTQ youth and people who want to live in a place that is truly accepting of all people to leave the state. And that's not what we need in Arizona, especially as we try to recover from this pandemic. More than ever, we need to be united. We need to heal together and come together to rebuild after this unprecedented time, from an economic perspective and as community members and as neighbors. Can we go to the next slide? So the legislature, in a lot of ways, is close to pro-equality policy work right now. And what I mean by that is that because of the configuration of the legislature, in the Senate, the Republicans have a slight majority, 16 to 14, and in the House, a slight majority, 31 to 29. Almost all of the votes, so many votes, especially on LGBTQ issues or other issues where there are these really divisive, discriminatory bills, are almost always along party lines. Occasionally, someone will, from the Republican Party, will um, choose to vote for the interest of equality and for the health and well-being of all Arizonans, and then a bill doesn't move forward either in committee or on the floor. Sometimes it gets stopped even before it gets to either of those places because they don't have the votes. But it also means that we don't have the votes for pro equality work. So there were all kinds of amazing bills that were introduced by amazing legislators, like Senator Bowie, right, Representative Chavez, Representative Hernandez, right, all of these amazing people introduced incredible bills that could have truly helped our community. And unfortunately, because the numbers just aren't there, those bills don't even get to, most of the time, the committee process. So because of that, a part of our work in terms of policy is also working in municipalities, and of course, working for elections. Go to the next slide. So I wanted to give you a little update in terms of our city work. We're going to do another policy update next week that's going to be really important and really awesome. It's Angela Huey from One Community and Mayor Giles will join me for that policy update, where we're going to talk all things Mesa, because there's big stuff happening there. In terms of our policy work, we are so lucky to have worked with the mayor, to work with One Community, to work with so many partners and Mesa residents to win a non-discrimination ordinance in Mesa a little over a month ago. Unfortunately, that ordinance has been challenged by right-wing extremist groups, the Center for Arizona Policy and the Alliance Defending Freedom. And so they just turned in their signatures yesterday. That's beginning the signature verification process to challenge that referendum. We've been so proud as Equality Arizona to work with One Community, the LDS Church, first responders, and families of every kind in Arizona or in Mesa for this ordinance and to support it. And we will continue to do that. And so we'll keep you up to date on what's happening in terms of the referendum process And in the meantime, we're looking and partnering with many other cities to hopefully get them started on their own journey to having a non-discrimination ordinance. And so this work is really important work because it just makes a huge difference in the overall climate of the state. Mesa was the seventh city in Arizona to pass a non-discrimination ordinance, and we will stand with Masons to do everything we can to defend that ordinance. Can we go to the next slide? So equality for all in Arizona really depends on flipping the legislature in many ways. If we want statewide policy, we have to be thinking about 2022. Can we go to the next slide? Elections shape what's possible in terms of policy. And in a highly partisan legislature, elections are what really change the climate and create that tipping point so that we can pass pro-equality and work for pro-equality legislation. So now's the time to prepare for 2022, which I know probably feels early, and we are recovering or trying to recover from exhaustion from this legislative session as well as last year, 2020, and the big election. But our midterm election is going to be huge. The midterm election not only has the state legislature up and will be voting for every seat, it also has the top five positions in our government in terms of the executive branch, including the governor, which that's an open race this time because Governor Ducey is termed out. So it's going to be a really big election, and we're going to need folks to be starting to help us do that work, not just in 2022, but now. I know there are lots of amazing folks who are LGBTQ folks and allies who are considering running for different offices, who are laying the groundwork for that, doing their investigative research and figuring out what that would look like for them and their families. We have specific targeted districts already where we're looking to really show up big in terms of pro-equality voters and support. And we really want to invite you to join us in that work and begin laying the groundwork for a successful 2022, because that election will truly matter here in Arizona. And it's those down ballot races, right? The legislative races, the races that aren't the big shiny ticket items like the presidential campaign, but it's really these down ballot races that make a huge difference in terms of quality of life for Arizona, for Arizonans, and especially as we're seeing for LGBTQ youth. Can you go to the next slide? So something else is happening right now, and this will change a lot of things for 2022. Currently, Arizona is going through a redistricting process. That process has just begun. An executive director was just hired. The redistricting commission has been selected. They're selecting the legal team relatively soon at the next meeting. We're starting to go through that selection process. And redistricting is drawing the electoral map, right? And so that determines which legislative district you're in or congressional district you're in, how those lines are drawn. 10 years ago, when the last, actually it might have been more than, no, I think it was 10 years ago, the last time that redistricting was done, it shifted the map pretty massively and changed some districts pretty intensely. And so we're engaged in this redistricting process with many other organizations and pro-equality organizations, and we're doing our best to encourage the commission to be as fair as possible. And the real hope here is to avoid gerrymandering, right, and to avoid creating districts where it's impossible for a competitive race to happen and it's impossible for pro-equality candidates to get elected. And so we're hoping for a fair and nonpartisan process that allows for the new districts to be drawn in a way where, regardless of party, people have a chance to actually succeed in those districts. The districts are competitive, and the districts are representative of truly representative of their constituents. And so. We anticipate that we'll have a 10th congressional district added, which will be very interesting. And we'll see what other changes will happen. And so this will be a process that we'll keep you updated on as well as we go through the year. You can go to the last slide, please. So in 2020, Quality Arizona for the election, we mobilized more than 2 million Arizona voters, which was an incredible feat. The staff of Equality Arizona, they worked so incredibly hard. Just the staff and voters, amazing, or is it staff and volunteers? Absolutely amazing work. And we're going to have to do that again in 2022 and possibly more. And so you getting involved today, you being a part of this briefing is important, but also you getting involved, signing up to be a volunteer, signing up for more of these types of briefings and trainings, signing up and becoming a member. All of that makes a massive difference in our ability to fight for equality here in Arizona, or not. And so I hope that you will continue to join us and continue to do this work with us. And thank you for joining us today. If anyone has any questions, you can ask them in the chat, um, and we can give that a couple of seconds. But um, I truly appreciate everyone joining us today. I hope that I was able to give you an update on the anti-LGBTQ bills going through the Arizona legislature, that feel substantive, while also helping understand why nothing is over in Arizona's legislature until the session is over. And so it's been wonderful spending this time with you. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Happy Easter. I hope you get some time with your loved ones safely, and take care of yourselves. Thank you so much.